Solidarity as a weapon in practice versus killer cops and white supremacy. This piece related to the anti-police struggle in the Bay Area, written by Cindy Milstein, is a revised version of a blog post on Outside the Circle, cbmilstein.wordpress.com. On December 10, 2014, after marching some 4 hours from downtown Berkeley to downtown Oakland, with only about 300 people at most, as the Fuck the Police demo was winding down, some folks outed 2 undercover cops. These police were not infiltrators, mind you. Infiltrators blend in much better and disrupt in much more subtle long-term ways, including by building trust and friendships. One of the undercovers got spooked and whipped out a gun. They also arrested 1 or 2 black people, seemingly at random, i.e., due to the logic of institutional racism. This incident is surprising and not surprising. The cops seemed tired. They admitted it themselves in a December 9 news story. Our nightly protests these past 2 weeks have already cost the Oakland Police Department $1.36 million in overtime alone. And that's just one of the many police departments, city, state, and federal, following us visibly and in the shadows. The vibrant, dynamic movement sparked by the courage and resolve of Ferguson is raising the social as well as economic costs of the U.S. business as usual of police murdering black and brown people on a daily basis without cause, save for the root reason, white supremacy. Many people are stepping up and stepping out. From thousands of newly politicized high school students who've walked out of their classes, decrying the violence of policing and its relation to the whole damn system, to the families who have lost loved ones to murderous police, and who have long known intimately that it's not one bad apple, it's the whole damn tree. It is not surprising that individual exhausted cops are, according to news reports, freaking out and making such mistakes as drawing a gun on protesters. Nor is it surprising that uniformed cops are given orders to shoot quote-unquote non-lethal bullets that injure and have been known to permanently maim and kill. For the moment, the police forces are on the defensive, and the only way for them to strive to regain it is to bring their frequently hidden violence, or hidden at least to many who are now protesting, into the light of the nightly marches. This is, as they say, a teaching moment for the U.S. public, or it should be if people are even remotely listening, witnessing, or participating in this remarkable time. As the nights wear on, you see more support in the streets, but also, tellingly, from passers-by in cars, folks leaning out their windows or doorways to cheer protesters on, or in casual conversations overheard. This movement is weaving its way into the social fabric, gaining new adherents and eliciting more reflection. It not only isn't stopping, it is spreading. That is why, unsurprisingly, the police are getting more serious about using every weapon in their toolbox, from ammo to lies, to stop it, to divide and hence stop us. What is surprising is not the police violence, not that the police use guns aimed unflinchingly at people, not that the cops daily murder people of color in the United States. That is the reason we millions are rising up across this continent, our bodies as a massive exclamation mark that enough is enough, it has to stop. It is not at all surprising either that since we are spotlighting the violence inherent to police, the police who are on the streets with us are none too happy. They are, in fact, enraged, a rage that probably puts the best of our rage to shame. They are not there to protect protesters or their rights, nor serve the communities that are demonstrating. Police per se, or more exactly the institution of policing as a whole, is precisely the raison d'etre for what has become a far-reaching movement. They know that, and when cornered, they're going to get even more freaked out, more violent, and sloppier, based on their correct belief, backed by courts, states, the nonprofit industrial complex, and other top-down organizations and power brokers, that they are immune to criticism, much less responsibility, much less having to worry about suffering any consequences if, when, they kill people, again and again. But it seems too many protesters still don't get it. They're surprised when an undercover cop, discovered, flagrantly brandishes their gun. That is the surprise here. How can the nightly street lessons not firmly be underscoring the reason we're already on the streets? And more to the point, how can such lessons not be binding us closer, deepening our desire to better look out for each other and distrust cops. Instead of being able to plainly see the relationship between the institutional pattern of cops as killers, cops as violent enforcers of everything from racism to capitalism, and our contestation of that fact, and thus why police dogging our protests are absolutely the violent ones, absolutely going to violently take aim at people of color and especially black males. The quote-unquote peaceful protesters in Oakland on December 10 quickly tweeted and circulated myths about the unmasked undercovers. As T.O. Brooke of Oakland put it, undercovers are outed by militants at great personal risk, get a gun pulled on them by freaked-out cops, and the story already being propagated online is the conspiracist/peace police fantasy of the cops instigating looting with absolutely zero supporting evidence. Outside agitator or cop agitator, both are red herrings, and not only don't capture the complexity of what is going on, but both are dangerous tropes being used to confound and divert. The police likely are laughing over their donuts and coffee about how easily indeed we are diverted. That, alas, is one of the best tools in their box, getting us to break ranks with and police each other, getting us to unravel our own movement for them. We need to confound the logic of state and its police apparatus by stepping up the concept of solidarity, not merely in name, but unfailingly and substantively in practice. We need to have each other's backs, just like the folks who bravely exposed these undercover cops, putting themselves in harm's way to try to ensure everyone made it home that evening. We need to continually remember why we were on the streets to begin with. Cops will and do kill every single day in this United States, and with near complete impunity. They do it to uphold the system that has, from the start, stolen lands and stolen lives in the name of colonialism and slavery, social control and social domination, wealth and power for some, and misery and impoverishment for the many. For us many, solidarity is a strong weapon. It is probably our best weapon. Even if the state doesn't have a full monopoly on violence, as anarchists of old contended, it has a vast arsenal of violence, ranging from tear gas and tanks to torture and drones, from endless amounts of guns to endless amounts of prison cells to endless techniques of psychological warfare. Solidarity is what initiated Ferguson protests across this continent and now world. It's what is keeping our fires of resistance burning. It's what is fueling our desires for a new world. Solidarity has built a movement against killer cops and white supremacy, and that's no small feat given the history and legacy of genocidal racism in the formation as well as maintenance of the United States. If we can craft smarter, stronger, more empathetic, and higher walls of solidarity to surround as well as sustain us together in our differences, we might just succeed in walling out the world of hierarchical social forces intent on breaking us down and ripping us apart. So how can all our varied organizing efforts, our choices of strategies and tactics, based on manifold political perspectives and aspirations, better encompass a generous attitude toward each other? How can a full sense of revolutionary solidarity, or a unity in our diversity, be practiced in the form of organizing itself, the process of getting from here to there? How can our organizing not mush down this moment into a liberal, all people are great, stay focused on whose bodies are most impacted systemically, and yet not devolve into divides based on hierarchies too often reinforced by identity politics, allyship, and charity models, or ideological/organizational insularity? During the distant era of the global anti-capitalist movement in the 1990s to early 2000s, people around the world tried to bring Zapatismo into their understandings of how to walk, side by side in what became known as the solidarity of horizontalism. Folks around the world eagerly hashed out the People's Global Action hallmarks, looking to allow for heterogeneous social movements and lifeways against the homogenization that globalization signaled. Various continental, regional, and city-based consultas, spokes councils, and convergences picked up the hallmarks, which offered a welcoming, humanistic frame, while not ignoring the disproportionate weight of who suffers under various systems of social control. One formation from that period, Montreal's Anti-Capitalist Convergence, CLAC, still actively exists today, despite political highs and lows, in part because it embraced such hallmarks. Its basis of unity is not completely applicable to the Ferguson-inspired movement, yet the solidarity it affords is far more expansive than present-day protocols or principles. Open arms of trust and promise, not judgmental do's and don'ts. For starters, it rejects all forms and systems of domination and discrimination, including but not limited to patriarchy, racism, and religious fundamentalism of all creeds, even as it steadfastly acknowledges the full dignity of all human beings. It strives to do this, in actuality, by organizing around a philosophy based on decentralization and autonomy, holding out a confrontational attitude, supporting social movement struggles, and engaging in forms of resistance that maximize respect for life and oppress people's rights, as well as the construction of local alternatives. Most critical, though, is its commitment to an inclusive, revolutionary solidarity in theory and practice. Respecting a diversity of tactics, the CLAC supports the use of a variety of creative initiatives, ranging from popular education to direct action and civil disobedience. The diversity clause, in essence, acknowledges that in opposition to systemic domination, such as white supremacy in a police state, could and should take many forms if any sort of large-scale social revolution is to be forged. In fact, due in good measure to this sensibility, much deeper, longer-lasting, spry, and diverse, on numerous levels, not to mention creative and even effective, social struggles and movements have flourished to the north of us in comparison to our part of Turtle Island. What this diversity of tactics translated into at that time was a diversity of people, not to mention growing an enormous and vibrant movement. Rather than an assertion of difference for difference's sake, potentially implying a diverse movement emptied of content, the diversity of tactics notion supplied a tangible guide of how to go about nurturing inclusiveness and unity in a way that was at once qualitative and sincere, and moreover allowed the particular, such as now Black lives, and universal, all lives, to complement, not crush each other, and struggle together for social transformation while concentrating squarely on whose lives do not matter, historically and presently. What does revolutionary solidarity look like now? For one, it looks like not jumping to conclusions about each other, especially based on perceived identity or identities, or things you can't or don't see. Such conclusions apply as well to what you didn't see during, for instance, a heated interaction, or rumors you were told, reports in mainstream media, or spins on events by the police. Speaking from our own first-hand knowledge of events and our own experiences, listening with curiosity so as to ask empathetic questions later, or with skepticism when the speaker is a cop or politician, and trying to view others in the social movement as the multidimensional humans that they are, humans who will all make mistakes and are all embroiled in various power imbalances but can also self-reflect, grow, and change, might go a long way here. It means not buying into the stereotypes or derogatory caricatures of different political perspectives, which typically is utilized as a wedge by the state and its policing agencies to egg us into voluntarily self-policing the quote-unquote bad protesters to protect the good ones. If social movement history in the United States is any guide, undercover cops can easily be dressed up as peaceful protesters to whip crowds into fighting among themselves, a far more likely scenario than putting masked-up anarchists into the mix. Those who mask up, by and large, if you take time to discover for yourself, are the ones most looking out for others on the streets and not initiating the call-out of others' tactics. They are simply trying to shield their identity from police so as to avoid arrest and prosecution, something we would all be well to avoid, or better lend solidarity to others, again without drawing the cops' attention. They don't necessarily share the same political beliefs or even have a worked-out politics. What they do share is a healthy antagonism toward authority, which is why they're inclined to mutually aid fellow protesters. Many who don masks when the masks aren't in place are the ones sharing free food, creating indie media and street art, organizing in their neighborhoods against all sorts of injustice, deschooling and free schooling, raising bail funds, setting up social centers and other autonomous spaces, doing cop watch, and being regularly targeted by police because of their race, class, or gender, or politics. They are most often the ones setting up all sorts of do-it-ourselves experiments to replace hierarchical structures of domination and death. Revolutionary solidarity also means not letting your own discomforts get in your way of being there for others, even if that means you need to walk away from something for a few minutes to collect yourself, or skip a protest to rest and do some self-reflection, which then might better allow you to push past your discomforts. It means being precise and truthful in your language about what is troubling you about various ideas or strategies. Quote-unquote peace, for instance, is a vacuous word in light of all the violence forced on people daily, from killer cops to homelessness to domestic assault and rape, to climate change disasters, lack of health care, and the new Jim Crow. The list is long and painful. There are many wars going on against all sorts of people, even if seemingly invisible to some of us. In our protests, then, peace becomes poor shorthand for, this act or behavior feels hard for me. Think about what makes it feel hard for you. Think about why something that feels hard for you, like dumpsters being rolled into the streets for use as a barricade to hinder oncoming riot cops and protect you, the demonstrator, and your friends, isn't different from you helping to move picnic tables from an adjacent park to block traffic on a freeway for several hours. And yes, keep riot cops at bay, so as to protect each other and hold a major urban artery, causing commerce to come to a costly standstill. Think about why a chain-link fence being cut open so people can escape a police kettle, i.e. when police surround folks on all sides with no exit in order to contain or arrest, isn't any different in terms of peace or not peace than some other piece of lifeless property being damaged, usually as symbolic point about, say, the complicity of police as enforcers of racist and classist cleanups of neighborhoods so rich people move in. Likely what is hard, really, is that certain actions trouble your own life experiences and especially socialization. That's okay. None of us are immune from being socialized badly by racism in a racist society, even if disproportionately so. For instance, with places like UC Berkeley costing tens of thousands per year, many students now come from sheltered upper-class backgrounds, whether they are white or people of color. They are gaining degrees within an institution that is structured to manufacture the next generation of wealthy and powerful elites, whether in business or the nonprofit industrial complex. So you might, as a student, not have been exposed to what it means to have your kids be bullseye for every cop who walks by, simply because they are black or brown. You might not get how it feels to be evicted from your home, criminalized for your skin color or gender, or go hungry on a regular basis. It might feel scary, challenging, or discomforting to now be exposed to ideas, people, and varied life experiences and upbringings that are far from your own underlying assumptions and lived experiences. That's okay. You can walk through and beyond those assumptions. You can choose solidarity, not charity, to be on the side of the dispossessed, as accomplices and co-conspirators in shaping an egalitarian and self-organized society. As a student who has already chosen to step into the street, despite the odds of that happening given the reactionary state of higher education, you can choose to become a rebel who thinks and acts for themselves, collectively with others, and stay one, even if it takes you a while to work through your prickly feelings. What is not okay, however, is what students and many others are doing with their prickly feelings to their purported fellow protesters. It is not okay to take out your own personal limits on others who are trying, like you, to create a better form of social organization, especially when those others are often people who are the precise targets of policing because of skin color and/or class and gender, politics and/or tactics, or whatever. So rather than yelling peaceful protests and waving fingers at people who are doing things that discomfort you, tactically and politically, see your discomfort as your own growing pains, as a wake-up call, as all of us becoming different and better people through the many beautiful, varied, powerful acts of making social change toward a better world as we discomfort ourselves and society. A lack of revolutionary solidarity can also be traced to disagreements about strategic symbols, strategic choices, and/or forms of organization. Debate is essential to growth, personal and societal, and to a dynamic movement. Yet critical thinking and being comfortable with harmonic dissonance is neither encouraged nor taught in our society. So we do conflict badly. That's one reason that police seem necessary to many folks. People are loath to work things out among themselves. It seems scary or impossible, perhaps because they don't know their neighbors, or because they don't have the know-how about conflict resolution techniques, or restorative justice models, or because they don't have good models of how to engage in constructive criticism and arrive at complex solutions that aren't either-or. Marry that to an individualistic ethos, the very origin myth of the United States. And many of us, consciously or not, usually want to see things go a certain way, our way. Such an outlook at heart relies on notions of control. That translates into a sentiment. We need to do something, fill in a single tactic or strategy, that people can understand, with understand meaning what you feel good about doing. Yet, as should be apparent from the multitude of strategies, tactics, protests, and direct actions, not to mention prefigurative forms of politics, different actions and tactics speak to different people. That's not only good, it's essential if we really do aspire toward a world in which, as the Accomplices have joyfully proclaimed time and again, all worlds fit. Social transformation in which, ultimately, all lives really do matter. Such openness to not getting one's way, or rather, to being inspired by all as humans can dream up, that alone we would have never imagined, is why this gorgeous, albeit always messy, movement is staying so strong and moving more people to engage. Some people are moved by die-ins in malls, others by trains or bridges being blocked, or kids self-organizing in defiance of administrators. Others are touched by seeing a new luxury restaurant's windows smashed, knowing that such places mean more policing, criminalization, and evictions of people of color and the poor. Still others are moved by graffiti on or damage to police cars, because it signals that the police aren't thoroughly in control as an invading army. Yet others are drawn to reclaiming streets with sound systems and dance, by projecting films and slogans on the sides of public buildings or via pulling together mass bike rides. Mostly, many are simply moved by the fact, and therefore are starting to join enthusiastically in the protest too, that millions of feet are pounding many miles of pavement day after day against killer cops and white supremacy. We haven't stopped, though the police are working overtime to divert and confound us. Yes, maybe we need to stop to better self-organize, so that we can do deeper, sustained jail and court support as follow-up to arrests, so that we can strategize on how to really shut down this system in myriad ways, and practice at the same time new ways of being and living, a new society that makes this old one truly look as brutal as it is, and ultimately makes it history, so that we can more freely share ideas and tactics with each other on how to better outwit the police as we struggle against them, so that we can do trainings on how to offer forms of mutual aid, from medic to legal to educational, to standing by those who already always bear the brunt of state violence. And mostly to join in dialogic reflection on the why behind our organizing, what we are against, and what we envision as potential alternatives. Most important, though, we need to stop to better enact revolutionary solidarity as a verb, our best weapon, a living practice as we struggle toward better having each other's backs, when our backs all look quite different from each other, as they should. We are, of course, far from that place of autonomous, dignified, and caring communities. But we can start experimenting with what such communities of care could look like, in micro ways, in the many micro moments we are handed, frequently by riot police. For we are not provoking the police. They provoke daily, which is why we are on the streets, where, as should be self-evident, they will continue to provoke. Our best provocation in return is making police obsolete, precisely by striving to constitute new social relations of revolutionary solidarity that make such institutions unnecessary. Given this, we need to stay extra powerful in our resolve to keep up daily pressure everywhere, to craft an ever more imaginative and inclusive diversity of tactics, to encourage varied forms of resistance in many cities at the same time, complementing and sometimes contradicting each other, but in concert. And we need to conjure up ever more savvy strategies. We need empathy and solidarity among all of us. Far less judgment and far more kindness, because it matters if Black, Brown, Indigenous, Trans, and other lives matter. If you are at a protest and you choose to take pictures or record video of people doing illegal things, you may end up putting that person in jail, observes Sharif Ali of Oakland. That is, because you disapproved of someone's behavior, because you thought it was violent toward inanimate objects, or because you thought it might hurt the movement, you are choosing to assist the state in sending that living, breathing person to one of the most violent places in the world, for the express purpose of destroying the movement. Even if you're right about the ethics or efficacy of property destruction, and I don't think you are, that is totally, utterly unconscionable, and it is far more violent and counter to the cause of justice than smashing a window ever could be. Or, as someone succinctly offered, solidarity is love. We are tired, too, like those freaked-out cops, undercover and in their riot attire, but not of the streets. We are not tired of fighting for a free society of free individuals. Instead, we are weary beyond words and slogans about all the violence of state, capital, and white supremacy. Revolutionary solidarity should look like us not chanting anymore, "This is what democracy looks like," because U.S.-style democracy is murdering people at home and elsewhere. Any sort of self-governance will have to look far different, engaging in practices of solidarity that are about self-determination, too. Revolutionary solidarity should not look like chanting, "Whose streets are streets," because the police state, colonialist and/or capitalist, has already repeatedly stolen those streets and the land below them, and owns them yet as private property, increasingly as enclaves for the super rich. Those streets are killing fields, whether for those made homeless, who now have to make those streets their homes, or for those whose lives are stolen every day on the streets, like Mike Brown's. There are so many other ways that revolutionary solidarity can tangibly be practiced, more than we can yet know under this current non-solicitous social arrangement. So let's bring bold imagination to bear on the project of implementing solidarity among us, as our weapon par excellence toward new worlds. Let's get some rest during the storm that has come, but not get so comfy that we forget why we are on the streets to begin with. I want to walk in the streets nightly, exhausted and exhilarated, forging trusting social relations, becoming new people in a new culture that we are trying to create with each mile, opening up possibility and holding strong, collectively and cooperatively, against those forces that would destroy all that is life-affirming. I want to be part of what scholar James C. Scott calls an anarchist calisthenics, while we walk the miles, in which, whether one is an anarchist or not, we practice together what it means to feel more and more comfortable in breaking the laws that aren't just, the very structural logic that's never going to be just, by definition, so that we can build up rebel muscles for the harder and harder fight ahead, the fight for freedom. I want to love and rage, mourn and fight, with millions of others, against this killing machine, until we shut it down for good, replacing it with a social goodness that we can barely yet envision, and armed with do-it-ourselves steel-hard solidarity as shield, aid, humanity, ethics.